Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone if you enjoy this content to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Alyssa Coppolino on the podcast.
Nailed it.
Yes! Okay, I was nervous a little bit that was going to happen, but hey, we got through it, everyone. She's on here all the way from Canada. We got another Canadian on the podcast, another 2-hour plus time zone guest, I should say, that we had one earlier on this week as well. But yeah, she's on here to just share her fitness journey with us and discuss all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Alyssa, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. As we kind of mentioned before, I'm glad someone is taking initiative in this industry and giving the women a chance in this sport.
Absolutely. And I do got to mention, everyone, we do recognize that the camera is a little wavy right now. There's little waves going around. Nothing we can do about it. So I'm just getting that out of the way right now. Deal with it, people. It's still going to be an amazing podcast. Alyssa, like I told you before, I got to say this because there's going to be one idiot that's going to complain about it. So we just got to nip it in the bud right away. But again.
Yeah, we are aware.
Oh, yeah, we are aware. But I ask this question now all the time. First off, what is the weather like today?
It's a perfect day out. So about a couple weeks ago, not even a week ago, we had about 2 weeks worth of just rain and cold. And by cold, it's like 15 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that converts to. And right now it's probably upwards of 26, 27 degrees Celsius. So, and sunny, and I can't complain because I need a little bit of the vitamin sun. So
if there was one thing that I learned from doing this podcast, because I've had guests from all over the world, is how, as Americans, we just like,
you guys just
why do we have to do miles and Fahrenheit? Like, why? Yeah, we do our. There's like us in one other country in like in like Central America or someplace like that like
something
does it
like that. Yeah,
and we're just like, for some reason, yeah, because then everyone's like, oh, it's 15 degrees here. Like, and you said that, and just me and my brain's thinking like, oh my god, that's like 17 degrees below freezing or something like that. But
yeah, that's it. Like, I think I've seen some memes where it was like, America will measure everything except for in kilometers and Celsius. So it's like, this football field is 14 blue whales or whatever.
Exactly. And I mean, I will say I would rather go to kilograms myself because it makes you feel a little bit better looking at that scale then and being like, hey, I only weigh like that many kilograms.
Absolutely.
So, you know, there is that. But before we get into, you know, the intricacies, something like that, there we go. She nailed it, everyone, with that, with all that stuff. Why don't you just to start off, give us your backstory and what inspired and motivated you to get into bodybuilding and how that led to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I played soccer my entire life, competitively. I played all through university on the varsity team. Once that was done, I just thought I'm way too competitive to stop doing something. So sort of like as an overlap with soccer, I started kind of dabbling in powerlifting. CrossFit was sort of becoming more of a thing. So this was like 2009, I started thinking about lifting up a weight. And then
I was a freshman in high school, everyone, just to put that out there. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you for making me feel old. So I was just on the tail end of graduating from university, and then I started sort of following, I don't know if anyone's familiar with DeFranco. So he wrote like The West Side for Skinny Bastards. I was interested in powerlifting, so Louis Simmons, all that was super interesting to me. And so I sort of did a hybrid of those types of programs until I went to a local bodybuilding show just to support a friend. I had no idea what I was getting into, just, you know, doing my friend thing. And I thought, this is for me. I saw the women walking around. I said, that's freaking badass. I'm going to start doing that. So I stopped trying to chase PRs, like heavy PRs, and I started to train for more aesthetics. And my first competition was back in 11 or 12 at a national or regional show. And I was pretty well hooked from then. So it's been about a decade of training specifically for this. Yeah. The rest is history.
How much does it hurt your brain when you have to explain to people that just because you're a bodybuilder doesn't mean you're going to be PRing and like lifting these absolute heavy weights? Because so many people just can't grasp that.
Constantly. They're always like, what's your max bench? Or the one that gets me is like, what's your max leg press? And I'm like, I've never tested that before. And I mean, like, there's parts of my preps where I'm the strongest, but most of the time I'm trying to hit more. I'm going for heavy volume, right? Rather than like 3 to 5 just crushingly heavy weights. So it's I mean, it's mostly guys who ask questions like, what do you bench, what do you squat, blah blah blah, because like a lot of people just go to the gym just to, try to lift as heavy as they can, and that's not always the goal. So there's a time and place for it, but not for me.
That's why I reserve those gym bro questions only for the powerlifters that I have on, because they're the only ones that like really have a good answer. But if I were to have bodybuilding as a photo in a nutshell, it would be like a jacked Arnold Schwarzenegger curling 15-pound dumbbells, basically, because like that's what the majority of it is. I mean, it's not.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think even Arnold even said, he says, I don't start counting until it starts to burn and hurt. Right. So he could still use 15s, but at the 50th rep, he might start counting his 12 to 20, whatever he's doing. Right. So, I mean,
absolutely.
That's it.
And I mean, bodybuilding has been evolving ever since it began, but especially in the last 10 years, I mean, it is almost a completely different sport, just like it is almost every 5 years. But what have been some of the biggest changes that you've seen since when you first got started to now?
I mean, when I first started paying attention to bodybuilding, women's figure was pretty much women's figure, and women's bodybuilding and fitness were like the ones that I would have paid attention to, started watching like TSN or ESPN, whatever, and would have, Saturday, Sunday mornings, the women's fitness, and I always thought that was, and I, did gymnastics when I was like 6. So, I mean, like I could never go back, do a backflip or any of that kind of right now. But so I think from the evolution of it being on television, that's a big deal, right? So they've gotten rid of that. The women's figure had 2 bathing suit rounds, I guess you'd call it, right? They had a 1-piece like velvet suit, and then the 2-piece. Women's bodybuilding, I guess, was still prominent, but I think it was sort of getting pushed to the side as newer categories were emerging and being developed. So, I mean, I've sort of seen the coming and going of both popularity and categories. I started watching like Dana Lynn Bailey. She was sort of like Dana Lynn Bailey, Monica Brandt, Nicole Wilkins and Aaron Stern were kind of like the pinnacle of my era of when I was starting. So, I mean, those women were like, that was the coolest thing ever. Dana Lynn Bailey sort of, I guess she almost created the women's physique division, right? Again, she was too big for figure, too small for bodybuilding. So they created that. And that was the second year that I competed. I transitioned to women's physique because I got the same feedback that she got. It's like, you're too big. My legs were always naturally big just from playing soccer. So they weren't going to get any smaller. So I was like, well, it just seems like a natural progression. So, I mean, I've watched, like I said, categories come and go, become less popular and more popular. And here we are with like the emergence of wellness, right? Which I guess is the newest female category within the last couple of years.
You can't tell, but I'm 6'3", so could you imagine what my body part was that really struggled to grow the most?
I can only imagine.
Good thing I'm sitting down. I'll just say that, because good God.
5'4", 5'5", I guess, on a good day. So, I mean, I'm a little more compact.
I mean, that's what gets me. Like I told you, I was at a bodybuilding show yesterday, and that's what gets me too, is just, I mean, there are some people that are decently tall at that show, but then there's a lot of them too that they're walking around, and you're just like, I could rest my elbow on their head basically and just be like, but it's just so impressive to see someone like that jacked who's like that short too also. I mean, it's incredible. But I got to play devil's advocate now. So you mentioned that your legs really took off. What's one body part that you just had to drag behind?
My chest. I think genetically I just don't have that split that a lot of girls have. And ironically, I get pegged for like a really good side chest pose. So, I mean, I'll take it, but I don't think I can develop that center part of my chest. So that usually gets left behind. And then as I drop in weight towards closer to show, my arms seem to shrink. So I have to like try to blow those up as much as I can in the off season, knowing full well that I'm going to lose a lot of size as I'm dieting. So, I mean, but it changes all the time, right? From when I started to when I now, it's been a decade. So my body has changed. And like when I was up and coming, my legs were like the first thing to come in, and my abs took a really long time. And then this past competition season, my abs were like the first thing to come in, and then my legs were dragging. So, I mean, like it changes all the time, and you just kind of have to adapt and go as it happens, really.
Do preps get easier or harder as you continue on in the sport?
As I'm an old lady now.
Okay, I've talked to 50 and 60-year-olds, so you're nowhere near
well,
that.
yeah,
So yeah.
they'll agree with me then. I would say not harder, but I mean, like, your life priorities also change too, right? So it's like, okay, well, I have a career, or I'm spending more time, or the world is more expensive, so I've got to put more time into making money. So, I mean, the balance shifts between where your focus goes. I'm very fortunate that I do have a boyfriend who supports me indefinitely. And when I'm like, okay, it's time for prep, I can pull back on my job a little bit more to allow for that. And then he'll pick up the slack, and then vice versa, right? When I'm in an off season, like, he can chill out a little bit more and I'll start working like a dog again. So, I mean, you just kind of have to find either the right person or the right job that supports those types of changes. But it gets harder physically, definitely gets harder. My knees are a little more Rice Krispies these days, a little snap, crackle, pop. But I mean, you do what you can. You take your glutamine and your fish oils, and you just try to stay on top of all those little things on the daily basis.
I've said bodybuilders should just be farmers really in the off season. Raise your own meat yourself, basically, because like that's the only way you're gonna save money, or like try to like.
Literally. Yeah,
Oh my
and
god.
we're really good at, like, we just went to Walmart and we found a whole bunch of like egg whites on sale, and so we're just like ba 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 ba, and we like find as much as we can, or like random sales during the week for eggs. And I mean, we do a really good job of not overspending on the unnecessary things. So you just got to be smart. Not everyone can be buying fresh ground, free range happy cows every week. So I mean, you kind of do what you got to do.
I mean, the only positive I will say about the pandemic is that the neighbor that lives right behind us, he's a huge deer hunter. So literally, we were just eating venison throughout the whole, because he would
That's
just toss it
amazing.
over to us. So yeah, we were
Yeah,
getting our free
that's
meat then
amazing.
for the
Yeah,
time.
so
Yeah,
like whatever like hookups you can
yeah,
get is like even better, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, it's especially people don't talk about that much about the price too. But it's like you guys are losing money. This is not a sport that you get into if you want to make money. If people believe that, I got a nice Ponzi scheme for them about it. Like I got a condo in Florida that they can invest in then basically. But it's just
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah, it's something you just try to, like, I don't know, bear. Yeah, you just kind of have to either deal with it, accept it, unless you're winning show after show, or you've got a crazy amount of endorsements and sponsorships, like, it's coming out of your own pocket.
Yeah, and I mean, the funniest thing was I was wondering, like before I even went to my first show, which the show I went to yesterday was my third show, but before my first show, I was wondering, like, how do these promoters make any money really with this? And then I saw the ticket prices, and then I said,
Yeah.
got it. So I saw one of the biggest comedians in the world at that same venue that I went to yesterday, and the comedian costs less money than the bodybuilding show.
Oh yeah,
So,
100%.
and then you're like, well, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, if they have booths there, there's $500 to $1,000 for like a supplement booth, right, for that weekend. If they even have a mini expo thing going on, it's at least $80 a head, right, to come through those doors. Every amateur competitor is paying $150 to $200 per category. Sometimes those athletes are doing, they're doing an open, they're doing an open masters, they're doing a masters, they're doing whatever novice, blah blah blah. So that's money per. I mean, I pay a fee every year for my IFBB membership, IFBB Pro membership. Unless I'm hitting the Olympia stage, right? Everything is coming out of my own pocket. So
Absolutely. And I mean, the one thing that isn't talked about as much in the sport is how much of a mental sport this is. I mean, the mental side of it is 100 times more important than any of the physical changes or anything else that you'll really ever see. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
Um, it has ups and downs. I think like anything that you put your heart into, you're gonna experience disappointment and frustration, and you're gonna have your peaks and your pits. So I think it's important to really ride the peaks, and then when you're in your lows, just remember that you're gonna come out of it. Like, everything ebbs and flows. Um, Again, like, the pandemic was a huge hurdle for a lot of people to come over, especially in Canada, because our government was just like, nope, nothing. You can just sit at home.
I will say this though, at least you guys aren't in Australia, because I heard some stories over there and that was a
Australia was pretty
nightmare.
bad too. I didn't go through the pandemic here in the Maritimes of Canada, but they had their own. They were literally calling it a bubble, and you could not cross in or out of those provinces. Ontario, they let you kind of move freely. But the worst part was leaving. Like, there was so much unknown about leaving the country. I could leave. Like, America was like, be like, yeah, sure, whatever, we don't care, just come over. But it was,
you go to Florida, you can cough on people for free.
Oh yeah, I could make out with anyone I wanted down there. But to come back to Canada was like a huge question mark, right? So like I missed 2 years of what I would consider my like prime age for competing, right? It's like early to mid 30s, and now I'm mid 30s, and so now I'm like, okay, now I'm on like the tail end. So I'm trying to hammer these next 2 years. So my attitude and my mentality is just like, which the pandemic sort of helped me kind of realize was like, if you're going to go for something, go for it now, because it could be taken like that away from you and you have nothing, right? So same with my job, right? I'm a server. So restaurants were like completely shut down. We were considered non-essential workers, right? I mean, we're always considered non-essential. We get treated like dog all the time. So, I mean, to then have that and then have your business taken away, and then now you don't have to go to the gym, and now you can't compete, and it was like a huge. So now that I have the opportunity, and I'm a little more YOLO, for lack of a better, stupid phrase. Thank you, Drake.
Oh,
but
God. Yeah, another great Canadian invention, Drake.
Yeah.
Drake, Justin Bieber, Celine Dion makes up for it a little bit, I guess. But
there you go. Shania Twain.
Shania Twain, yeah, that too. Bryan Adams, I'm a big Bryan Adams guy too. So
tragically hip. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. But I do gotta ask this. This has nothing to do with bodybuilding, just because it's fascinating to me. So, is tipping in Canada? Is it just like it is in America, or is it different? Kind of like how in Europe, where you don't really tip, really, or?
Yeah. Now we have like a national minimum wage. I know you guys kind of go state by state on who's getting what. So we have a national minimum wage, and then 18 to 20% is typically a pretty average. Between 15 and 20% is a pretty average tipping. But yeah, tipping is encouraged because we are making like $13, $14, whatever it is, $14 an hour. Which is still not a living wage.
Oh, absolutely not. But like,
and honestly, like I realize we are way better off than some of the like the $2 an hour wages that a lot of servers get.
I was just about to say that's what it is here. It's like $3.75 an hour or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I started serving and it was like under $6 an hour, and that was back when I was 18, 19 years old. So I mean, it's doubled basically since then. However, what's inflation, right? So I do okay. I've been doing it. I'm basically a career server, so I enjoy it. I make a good money at it, and people leave me alone at work for it, which is great. So
and that is great. So I got to ask, I mean, dressed the way you're not the average looking woman, especially being a server where you're out and about a lot. What are some of the reactions that you get, especially as you get closer to a show? Because that's got to be just fascinating to experience that.
Yeah. A lot of the time they go, "Oh, you work out, right?" And I go, no one's got time for that. Yeah. So I can't help but be a little sarcastic with the answer. But yeah, I get some like, oh, like you must compete, or you lift, or you're a wrestler, or do you box? Or I get a whole range of things. So I usually divert the conversation elsewhere.
Okay, so I'll just give you a little heads up about also what happened yesterday. So there was like 6 guests that I've had on that were at the show.
Yeah.
One of them came up and talked to me, but I'm one of those people where unless you come up and talk to me first, like I don't want to bug you.
Yeah,
like I don't want to. Yeah, and I was raised way too Midwestern too, where it's like I don't want to waste any of their time. I don't want to take it. And then like, so I made a message that I was at the show, and then like 5, 6 of them messaged me and be like, "Oh, you're here. Let's come meet or whatever." It's like, and I literally messaged back like, "You walked literally right in front of me like 5 minutes ago, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to bug you and just like." Yeah. Just like say hey, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's stupid." But I was like, a lot of them weren't really from the area, and I was like, "You don't understand Midwestern thing where you're just like, no, yeah."
I would agree. That's like me. I just like, I'll give you the nod if I see you, but like you've got to initiate because I don't want to interrupt, and I'm a pretty introverted person. So like when I do serve, it's like the Alyssa serving voice or interviews, and like I can be a little bit more open, but I like if I'm just walking around, I've got that face on, and like no one wants to talk to me, and that's fine with me.
I will say though, I'm the exact opposite, where it is Pandora's box, where approach me if you because like then I just the floodgates open then.
Everything.
And then so that's why I do got to tell people because like I am not an introvert, but I'm a selective extrovert. I'll say that. So like I'm not just
That's
gonna go
fair.
around. I'm not
That's
just
fair.
gonna go around just talking to everyone. But like if I know everyone that I'm going to, or if I know a lot of people, it's game over. Really, it's
I
you know.
mean, like you can be polite and still be reserved at the same time, right?
That's the
So,
thing. Cause people are like, "Oh, are you just shy?" When I tell people, I was like, "No, it's just I just don't want to bug people and just like be like rude and
yep.
just walk up to people, especially like when they're talking to others." But when it comes to just many of the unsung things about prep, we talked about nutrition. What were some of the biggest nutritional changes that you've made throughout the years? Because your body does get different throughout the years, and you're not going to be eating the same stuff that you ate when you started the sport.
Yeah. Um, I think I've always had a little bit of tummy issues, so a little touch of the IBS, which makes food selections vary all the time. So it could be stress, it could just be an overuse of of one food over another. It changes all the time. I usually stick with like 4 or 5 like just staple things that I know sit well in my stomach. Um, so that hasn't changed too much. I typically go pretty low carb all year round in general. In the off season, obviously a little bit more, but I'm never going to be one of those girls that can handle like 500 grams of carbs in a day. The idea of that makes me want to throw up. That is just so much food to me. So I don't eat a ton and I'm perfectly fine with that. People are like, "How do you manage?" I'm like, "I don't like I'm not if I'm hungry, I'll eat. If I'm not, like I'm not. Like it's not a big deal." So that's nothing's changed too much other than I mean, I just try to do my best to supplement appropriately. If I know that I'm, only getting egg whites in or chicken in, then I've got to making sure that I'm up on top of my other nutrients, whether it be in the form of a greens powder or just something to keep the balance. But I've stayed pretty consistent throughout all the years.
If there was one food that you could make healthy or you could make it acceptable to eat when you're prepping, what would it be?
Hamburgers and French fries, hands down. If I could only eat one thing for the rest of my life, it would be hamburgers and French fries and a Diet Coke. I'll never get tired of it.
Well, I was gonna say, being a server too, how hard is it too? Sometimes, obviously, you're not gonna eat other people's food, but like to see them making burgers and fries, just
Well,
to
I mean,
not
there's
like want to
always the
just sneak
fry
one of
bowl.
them or something like that.
Yeah, the fry bowl that just kind of like hangs out on the line is definitely a temptation. But I mean, if I'm running around and I'm busy enough, I can't even think about it. So we just pray for a busy night so that I don't get little munchies happening.
Again, this is the difference between them and me mentally. Whereas to me, I would just be like, those people can serve themselves. I'm gonna go hang out by the fry. Just get one last handful. I mean, I just don't have that. That's again what made me realize how just different these people are, these athletes are. So yeah, and when it comes to the competitive side of things, I mean, one thing that is so much harder than a lot of people give it credit for is posing. Most people, when they talk about either posing or working out or the nutrition, they don't realize for a lot of my guests, posing is the hardest, if not one of the hardest of the three of them. What has your relationship with posing been like?
I hate posing. I hate doing a routine. I hate posing. Um, I like the working out and the competing part. I don't like the posing part. So, and that was, like switching to physique was difficult, obviously, because I got to give up the heels, but I had to exchange that for a posing routine. So, I mean, kind of sucks. But for me, it's more about like finding the time to do it. Um, I would consider myself a relatively good poser. I have had, like Kenny Wallach help me out in the past, so he can fine tune things closer to show. He's awesome. He's able to kind of like he's like a Jedi. And so for me, it's almost finding the time to practice it and reminding yourself that when you do practice it, it is considered a form of like conditioning, right? So like the harder you flex, the more your body's getting used to it, just like doing wind sprints, right? Obviously the first time you're not going to be able to hit those super fast speeds, but over time you work at it and you get better at it. And the same with posing, you're able to hold your breath in your stomach better. You're not shaking so much and you're not nervous about it. So it's finding the time to put in, whether it be like those 10-15 minutes after a long leg day, like mentally that's harder than physically, in my opinion. So I don't do as good a job as I could to fit that in further out from show. And I don't know if a lot of athletes are transparent about that. I can't be the only one. A lot of them who are like, practice posing all year round. And I'm like, I will guarantee that they're not practicing posing all year round. Sorry, not sorry. Because it's a time suck. And like, you've already done your hour and whatever cardio, 45 minutes to an hour of cardio. Now you've got an hour to an hour 15 or an hour and a half of working out. That's kind of my range. Now you've got to tack on another 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes of posing. Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I work 40 plus hours a week. I have a boyfriend and a dog whom I would like to see. And then I've got to try to get in another 7 to 8 hours of sleep that night. I don't know. So, I mean, it's, this kind of goes back to like that commitment, right? Where it's like, it's so much more than just stepping into the gym 5 days a week or whatever you're doing. It's like every minute detail. And like, I write my whole week out, like with times of like when ideally I want to put things in. Because organization is going to be so organizing and planning to pose. That's part of it. And I don't usually do that until I'm at like the 10-week mark. So, and then even then it's like 10-week hits and it's like, okay, 2 times a week. Okay. Then it's like 3 times a week and then it's more. So, having a coach is helpful because if you're going to check in with them, you're posing already for them in a video or in pictures. So it's like, you might as well count that. Right. Just to kind of like 2 birds, 1 stone situation there. But man, it's a process.
I mean, I've wondered this out loud a million times, but Kenny Walk, I mean, I've had hundreds of guests on the show and he is 2/3 of them. How does he have the time to do all that?
That's what I always wonder too. And I mean, they're only like half-hour sessions at a time, but I mean, the man is dedicated. And I don't know how Angela, his secretary, I don't know I know she schedules everything for him, but she's got to be keeping track of his schedule and he's got to be, it's frick. I can't imagine. I try to think about it because it stresses me out.
Like the hundreds of guests that I've talked to, plus that means that there's probably like 4 or 5 times that he actually does too. So
easily.
I mean, maybe even 1,000 guests that he might do in a year span. So do the math, 16 guests a day if you're doing half-hour sessions.
I buy sessions for my clients who are competing with him, right? And they're not pros. Right. So, I mean, like even just tacking on 1 amateur client every so often before a show, that's crazy. It's crazy.
I've been trying to get him on just so he can discuss like how he does that. That's like the only that, I mean, obviously I'll ask him another question, but like the big one is going to be like, dude, do you have any time management skills that you can share with me then? Because it's like,
I know. God. You'd be a cool person to have on a podcast.
I know. I've been trying to get him on. So we'll see one of these days, but time management, obviously, like you mentioned a little bit, but any tips and tricks that you have for just the general public on how to manage their time better? Because when it comes to time management, I always say talk to the bodybuilders because some of them are, very not time management, but a lot of them are that type A where just they know how to get stuff done.
Yeah, some of them are crazy and some of them are lax about it, but I think it's a conversation that you need to have with yourself. And probably one of the best quotes, I don't even know where I heard it from, but I know I repeat it a ton, is excuses always sound better to those who are making them. Right? I don't care what issue you have going on that is preventing you. I've got my own issues that I'm working around and through, whether you've got 5 kids, 1 kid, no kid, whatever, time zones, I don't care. Your excuses will only sound good to you. To me, they sound like an excuse. So if you keep telling yourself you can't do something, you're not going to do it. So I think it's, there's a picture of 2 guys, they're chipping away at what will look like diamonds on the one side. And one is like 2 chips away and he's like, can't do it. And he's turning around and walking away. And that other guy, he's just going for it. So to me, it's like, if I turn this corner, if I keep turning corners or if I keep chipping away, eventually I'm going to get my diamonds. And if I stop, I'll never know if I was that 1 chip away or that 1 right-hand turn away from getting where I want to go. So it's like this belief that if I just keep going, it's going to happen. And it's just an attitude I've had for a really long time. And I keep reinforcing it to myself because I think it's valuable to have that hope, constant hope.
And then there's that one genetic freak that just needs one thing. And then all of a sudden they find the diamond.
I mean, that's it. And I have battled my genetics from day one. and I understand that I can't negotiate with my genetics. I can't negotiate with my body. And I will always have to be that person that has to do 2+ hours of cardio. I'll have to be that person that eats well under 2,000 calories a day. That's just me. And I don't cry about it. I just understand the cards I was dealt and I deal with it. So, I mean, you deal with what you get.
Does it ever make you crazy when you look at some of the guy bodybuilders and realize the stuff that they can eat and how much they're allowed to eat in their preps?
Not really, because I know what my capacity is, and I look at them and I'm like, they're eating like 6 chicken breasts or like 12 eggs.
For me, I'm just wondering how they're not throwing up constantly just from
exactly
overeating.
I think. I'm like, I get so full after eating like a salad, and I'm like, I'm done. I can't. So no, I don't get envious.
Well, that's what I end that question with, like, be careful what you wish for, because I can guarantee you, like, if I had to force feed myself that much, like, my stomach would not be, I mean, I'm not Joey Chestnut or anything like that, which, by the way, everyone, he's coming to Minnesota in 2 weeks, and I'm going to go see him at the Rib Fest that they have right next to where I live. So
he's coming off another win too, right?
Good God, I could never do that. That is just, I mean,
is that his 16th or 17th year in a row or something
16th
like that?
And I think he's won 16 and 17 years. So he lost 1 year, but then obviously he had to come back. But like they said, I think he went through like 13,000 calories or something like that, just in 10 minutes or something like that. So
that's ridiculous.
God, I mean, I want to have a camera crew follow him around the next couple of days, just as he, gets rid of all that. So then we're going to control, like, hey, it's not as glorious as it looks,
but cute as we think. Yeah,
obviously not as cute as we think. Well, I mean, unless you never know with some of those genetic people, but that is just neither here nor there. But I mean, how do you keep yourself preoccupied during cardio? Because you said you do 2 hours worth of cardio. During the pandemic, I was doing so much cardio, but the thing is, I ran out of movies to watch, so then that kind of screwed me over. But how do you keep yourself occupied during that long stretch of time?
Sometimes it's shows, sometimes it's revisiting shows. When I'm like starting kind of now, I'm at around the 12-week mark right now. I start to focus a little bit more, and so I find sometimes if I'm just watching a show, I'm not paying attention enough to what I'm doing, and I'm not being intentional with my cardio. So I have a touch of the ADHD. So if anyone ever knows about that,
can you tell that I have an extreme case of ADHD as well?
Yeah, so you'll understand. So you tend to fall into what is comfortable and familiar. So like I've watched The Office probably close to 15 times throughout all my preps, and I'll just keep rewatching it. And so like that with like some certain YouTube channels, I'll just watch and rewatch, and like I don't even need to watch it. I can close my eyes and I know what's happening like in the YouTube video. So for those people that I watch constantly, you're welcome for all the views, because that's definitely me watching and rewatching your videos. So things that motivate me, obviously, I get excited about, usually centered around competing. But yeah, this morning I was watching a little bit of like, and I wasn't really paying attention. I'm like on my phone as I'm going for like my 45-minute walk. So it's like, Vanderpump or, Housewives, like some garbage show that I don't really have to pay attention to. That's usually what's on. But now I'm getting focused. So it's like motivational.
So is it normally around the 12-week mark, the switch kind of flips, or?
I'm always like dedicated to the craft and I'm always like focused. But I mean, like now I find I start to become a little more intentional, I would say, with it. And I mean, I just came off a show, Toronto, after prepping for like doing 2 shows kind of back to back. And so I try to let off the gas a little bit just to give my brain a break. Because I don't know, I tend to then I don't want to resent it, and I don't want to start, hating the process. So I have to let myself have a little bit of fun. And I still stay tight, but I mean, like 13, 15 weeks is when I'm really like, okay, I'm going to bed, I'm doing this, I'm focused. So that for me, some people are longer, some people are shorter.
A lot of people don't understand as well that the look that you guys present, not a lot of the guests think that is actually their best look, like the look that they present on stage. A lot of them might prefer like the 3 to 4 weeks out, or they don't really prefer the super, super dry. Are you one of those people where you kind of prefer more the like 3 to 4 weeks out look, or do you like the stage look better?
I mean, it's not comfortable being stage lean.
That's why I say that most of them like the 3 to 4 weeks out.
Yeah, like it's really uncomfortable. You just feel gross and bad. So I mean, I would say probably like a month out, 3 weeks is probably where I'm like, I know that this isn't necessarily sustainable, but like I don't feel bad yet. My joints don't hurt quite yet. So I'm like, that's like the happy, but like in like just not sure, not too long after, you're going to go downhill from there. You'll look good. And that's another mantra that you kind of tell. And I think this was like a Victor Martinez, but it was the worse you feel, the better you look, which also has a good beat for when you're running. The worse you feel, the better you look.
Oh yeah.
That's that's another one of my little like internal sayings.
Yeah, because if I were to do a poll, I think like 3 to 4 weeks would be like where the people think that they look sort of the best, and then the 5 to 6, or not that they look the best, but like they feel most comfortable. But then 5 to 6 is like that's something that like, oh, I could maybe sustain it, for a little almost year round, and then so
exactly. It's and I mean it's still not, but you're feeling pretty strong, and then probably like the month out you're like less strong, and then a couple weeks out you're like, please just let this be show day tomorrow. So
we got to talk about post show blues too, because like the show that I was at, you would see the guests just pigging out afterwards, just right outside the arena. Like,
yeah,
it was at a casino too that hosted it too, so it was just, they were having free drinks and everything. But how do you deal with that? Because most people don't understand that, first of all, you're not going to look like that 24/7, which is another big myth that a lot of people just don't seem to believe. And then second of all, I mean, yeah, you are going to have to put on weight. So how do you deal with the mental side of like, it's just part of the process?
it's hard, and I haven't mastered it yet, but I've gotten way better. I think that just comes with maturity.
First of all, nobody's mastered it. I've talked to people that have done this for 25 years and they still struggle with it.
It's still a total mess of your mind. I was, after my first show, I blew up a ton. Second show, blew up a ton. Third and fourth show, I think I was too tight on my diet, and so I didn't make enough improvements. I don't think I was still doing too much and not eating enough. And then I started getting better and recognizing that you do need, and you are highly anabolic right after a show, so you can afford the extra calories. With this prep, I probably went like maybe 1 or 2 weeks past that point of where it was useful. And so that's when, so it was probably like for like 3 weeks after Toronto, I was feeling amazing and we were increasing food and it was great. And then all of a sudden it was just like, it just hit me and I started feeling worse. And all of a sudden I got like watery and I drink a ton of water. So, I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't drinking enough throughout all this. So, and I kind of like, I've been fighting that a little bit to come out of it. And that's where I'm like, okay, like 12 weeks now we're ready to go, but it's not easy and it's hard. It's a mental mess. Women, I think, suffer from it the most. We just have a super different relationship with food than guys do. And it's nothing that a male coach can explain to a female competitor. Not that I don't think male competitors are great with females, but it's just this attitude we have about food, that is just, it eludes any male. And so I think understanding your particular relationship with food is important, both your intake and like the amount that you're intaking after a show, more or less, but it's real.
I mean, I have not met a male competitor who has not said this exact line to me. Oh my God, I get to eat more and I get to do all that in the off season. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I've never met one of them that said, "Oh my God, I got to lose all this." They're just excited to eat more. So yeah, it is completely different. That's, I mean, there are some things obviously other than just that too that like male coaches won't get. But yeah, it's just
yeah, it's a combination of scary because you're letting off you're letting off the brakes, right? But you also know that it's necessary. So it's like you're like constantly on a teeter-totter. You're like on the center of a teeter-totter and you're trying to like balance it out, and literally like the slightest move one way or the other and you're totally messing yourself up. So it's really hard to explain. It's something when I'm coaching my clients, it's, you're paying me for this much, but I'm going to give you an extra month after your show free of charge, just so that I can monitor and keep you focused and be there for you emotionally, mentally, because that's the toughest time, especially for a new competitor.
Have you thought about just going to school and getting a therapy license? Because that's basically what you become when you become a coach. Basically, people don't understand that that's half of it, at least.
Yeah, it's beyond my scope, but I can only speak, anecdotally. But you learn a lot through doing too, right? And that's basically what I've done.
Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah,
Yeah.
because some of the trainers I've talked to, it's like, yeah, you could honestly just be a therapist right now. I mean, you just, with the amount that people just don't understand goes with it too. But when it comes to being a coach, also, what is your favorite part and what is your least favorite part?
Of coaching?
Yeah.
Um, I'm more of like the tough love coach. Kind of like we spoke on before, where it's like your excuses, I don't care about your excuses. Not that I'm trying to be like Jocko Willink or anything, or David Goggins by any means, but I do think it's just a like just nut up and do it situation. So it's hard to find people who respond to that. I'm caring, but I'm firm. So I think it's not assuming that everyone has the same attitude that I have about training and about life. I go hard at the paint, man. Like whatever I do, I wasn't naturally good at school, but I freaking tried, right? And like I'm not naturally fit all the time, but I try. So it's letting people to understand that they need to step out of that comfort zone and be uncomfortable a little bit to achieve those things. And it's the same way when you're trying to get a degree, right? You have to like push yourself to study differently, or ask for help, right? That's uncomfortable, right? The human body wants to take the path of least resistance, right, at all times. So it's encouraging people to push against the wind a little bit, right, to take off just like a plane, right? So it's the attitude of like, I can do it, that I think is the hardest, because I have all the tools to give them. I'm a great movement specialist. I have a kinesiology degree. I love the way the human body works and how it moves. And I can pick out points in someone's movement where they're like, hey, try this, or, just twist of this wrist, or push your feet this way. So I'm really good at that. And I could do that all day. It's putting out that like confidence in them, right? To understand that like you have that in you. You can do this. You just need to understand being uncomfortable is okay. So it's an attitude change, not a physical change.
Well, we're getting close to the topic, and I got to bring it up. It's two words that bodybuilders just hate to hear: body dysmorphia. We got to talk about it a little bit, because to me, it is just from an outsider's point of view. I find it funny, which not funny, but it's just amusing that I talk to some of the most in shape people on the planet, and I still get messages from them like right before a show saying like, "Oh my God, does that look like it's a tie-in right there or something like that? Or does it look like this?" And I just want to tell them, you are an idiot, just because I'm looking at it from the general public, where it's just like you are in better shape than 99.99 repeating. But because, like I said, I've never competed, but I just obviously from talking to so many competitors, I know what they're talking about. But just like I come at it from the view of like, you're in such great shape. Like the fact that you're worried about a certain muscle in your back popping out and stuff is, but how do you deal with the whole body dysmorphia side of things? Because when it comes to the general public, you can't really talk to too many people that will have that much sympathy for you when it comes to that.
Not at all. I think that's why I don't talk a lot about myself to other people unless they ask. I usually keep it pretty vague, pretty humble. My boyfriend sadly gets the brunt of my complaints.
The significant others are the unsung heroes of this podcast. I've said it multiple times.
Truly are. Shout out to all the significant others. It's definitely a thing, but I also think that that's what makes athletes, and not just bodybuilding, athletes the greatest on earth, right? Like they're in the NFL for a reason. They're in the Major League Baseball league for a reason, right? Because they've never been satisfied, right? You can like complacency is like the death of goals. It's the death of everything, right? It's like never just being like, okay. Like just being okay doesn't get you further. And that's fine. If you are happy where you are, I will not judge that. That's just not my attitude on things. I'm always looking to be better at something, whether I'm the best food prepper, the best dog mom, the best daughter, the best girlfriend. Like I want to do more for the people around me, and I want to do more for myself. So I think it's just about, we're always striving for more. And whether that's like a little extra tie-in, or it's tightening up on our water, or it's cutting out sweeteners because it's making our tummies upset or something like that. It's stepping out of your comfort zone to be better. It's a hard attitude to teach someone. But that's why we pay so much money to go watch the best athletes in the world. Tom Brady, right? Like, do you think Tom Brady was like, yeah, like I'm good enough? No, like the guy's a freaking freak, right? Because he spent so much time, doing his craft and perfecting it and working on it. And I'm sure to him, and it's why he keeps leaving, retiring, and coming back, that last bit wasn't good enough for him.
I mean, I will say this though, those athletes there, a lot of them, not a lot to them if you try to have a conversation with them, just because they spend so much time. I'm not talking about bodybuilders. I'm talking about, just like, no, again, I've talked to some bodybuilders that literally are the stereotype of like, they just grunt. Basically, that's all they do. Like they just, and there's two of them in my college gym, and I just wanted to go up to them and be like, you are setting everyone back 1,000 years by what you're doing. But like, yeah, it's just because they're just so focused on one thing that like they just can't. The athletes, so because I've heard some podcasts that some of the athletes do, and you're like, there's not that much to them mentally, but that's just because they've spent their entire lives focusing on other things. And it's a type of ADD and hyper focus, which I've found so many of the guests that I have on have some sort of like ADHD thing going on, because I think you really do need to have that. It helps, at least. You don't need to have it, but it helps.
And there's nothing wrong with not having that and being okay with where you are. Yeah. And I'm happy for those people, right? Because they're probably not as stressed out, or a different kind of stress than the ones that I experience. And like, again, it separates, and that's what creates a Bill Gates, right? Like all the hours that he spent on working on his computer, or Jeff Bezos, all the books he started off just selling, right? To get where he is now, where he's I mean, I don't have any good things to say about him, but he is a billionaire for a reason, right? So, I mean, it's what separates. It's why we put these people on a pedestal, is because they've put so much time and mental energy into something, and they've always been trying to push.
Yeah, I worked at an Amazon warehouse for a year when I was in college, so yeah, I got nothing else better to say about him too as well. So yeah, I know. And this is before it became automated too. This is like 2 years before all of a sudden everything's automated and you just like press buttons. This is like when you actually do like the manual labor type of stuff in there. Wow. But yeah, it was rough. But two of the questions I love to ask people as we get closer to wrapping things up here: if someone were to walk up to you and say, Alyssa, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Oof. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm sure if I thought on it more, we would be past the hour and then I'd have a better answer. But for now, I would say I wish there were more clear-cut lines across divisions, especially actually guys are kind of like, the lines are kind of getting blurred there too. Like men's physique, classic physique. Now they're like, well, what are you? And then it's like bodybuilding, and then men's, classic. And it's like, well, okay. So I wish there were more clear-cut lines, and I wish that judges followed the criteria that they put out on the IFBB Pro website on what the divisions look like and what they mean. I think there would be a lot less death. I think there would be a lot less illness, sickness, both mental and physical, if those lines were more clear.
I mean, the thing that pisses me off the most is if people, especially at the amateurs levels, where they go and they compete in, like, let's say physique and then bodybuilding, and they win both those.
Yeah.
That should be a clear indictment that you're not judging correctly if someone wins multiple divisions. Because if you have the body to win physique, you should not have the body to win bodybuilding, and vice versa.
100%. I still don't get it.
The worst is that I had someone who won in figure, bikini, and wellness at one show.
So, I mean, like, what are you?
Yeah, exactly. So that's, exactly. And, well, I've said before, but prize money too. Good God, everyone.
And I mean, like, that's 3 divisions that person paid to go into. You know what I mean? But anyway, but like prize money is tough. It's obvious where they want their ticket sales to be by the prize money. It's kind of a bit of a slap in the face. Again, like we went back to talk about before, where women they're harder working. Like, we're always at a disadvantage no matter what we do in life. And unfortunately, we will never be rewarded for the extra work that we have to put in order just to get a simple nod. So, I mean, Jake Woods is doing his best to bring bodybuilding back. There still needs to be more acknowledgement and recognition.
Wasn't there one show, I'm trying to remember who the promoter was, but I thought there was one show where they're rewarding the same prize money for men and women. I'm trying to remember what it was. It's like, it was I think it was some guy was trying, and it was one of the major shows or something. I think it was a Wings of Strength thing that they were doing.
Probably because Jake Woods runs the Wings.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. So that might be what it was. But I mean, that's one thing that when everyone says like, oh, why do you talk to a lot of because my guess is like my guest list is like 95% female. I'll have a guy in there every once in a while just so we can just grunt at each other and just do all that stuff. But like, this the females because yeah, they work just as hard, if not harder. Like she said, I'm not gonna say they work harder because I don't have one gym bro come up to me and be like, "You said that women work." It's like no, but they do, you know.
They do.
But so and they aren't really compensated as much as they should. Now again, it's just in my 5 years that I've done this, it's gotten better, but it still has so long to go before.
And I mean,
it's anywhere
social
close.
media now has more of an impact on who gets sponsored and who gets more recognition too, right?
The thing that scares me the most about that, though, is that like you might have someone that might, like in the future, because no one has this right now, but you might have someone that has like tens of millions of followers that does not have a look that's like that good for body, but they're just gonna win a show then because they have all the influence then, and then the promoters just want them to win it.
Or they don't even compete and they have that many, and then all of a sudden they've got a full ride sponsorship, from a company, and I'm busting my ass, but I don't post as much, but maybe I produce better on stage, and then I'm still paying thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? And I'm not just saying me, I'm saying many, a majority, right, are suffering from that. And even the men too. So
yeah, I mean, social media is great. I was just laying out the worst case scenario, which I think is going to happen eventually because it will, but just,
now we got Twitter's kind of taking a nosedive. Threads is now a thing. And
have you looked into that yet? Because I haven't yet.
I did, and I mean, it's just Twitter.
Yeah. So like I was thinking about doing it myself because like doesn't it transfer all of your Instagram stuff to it?
Yeah, it does. And then I think the difference is that there aren't any hashtags.
Okay. So
I haven't explored it that much. Again, like I've got other things to do.
Yeah, exactly. Okay? Yeah, I haven't looked into it myself, but I got a couple hours break between my next podcast, so I might do that. Now, lastly, when we do have you on a year from now, because I'd love to have you on a year just to give us an update on what you've been up to, and where would you like to be at in a year? What are some of your goals?
I would like to hit the Olympia stage. I've hit it once. I'd like to hit it 1 to 2 more times before I really like call it quits. And like the only reason I would call it quits is because there's younger girls coming up in the division. I mean, there's a lot of 40s and 50-year-old women on the in the circuit who are doing amazingly. I understand my limitations, so I would love to be able to have a couple more pro wins and a couple more Olympia appearances. I want my coaching business to be my primary source of income because I think I have a lot to offer this industry, to women, to men. I've coached both, and I think that's important to me. It's important to me. So I'd like to come back on and say that I've hit the Olympia stage, at least one more time. I've got a pro win, and I'm fucking crushing the online coaching game. So.
Well, Leslie, what was that moment like when you walked on stage for the Olympia for the first time? Because for anyone out there that doesn't know that's like the Super Bowl of bodybuilding.
It was surreal. I think backstage was probably I love being on stage. I am like, I don't remember anything about preps really until that like moment on stage where I'm the happiest. Like you see me smile on stage and it is like the most genuine smile you'll see from me. I love it up there. It's the one time I want to be paid attention to. You can ignore me the rest of the time, in person, but it was so cool. Standing next to people whom I've idolized for several years, Kira Newman, I think her and I were standing next to each other, and like Shanique Grant was there at that time. And I mean, like, it was the coolest. Yeah. I didn't even make top 10. I was like 4th call out or something like that. But I'm like, it made me hungrier to do better and do more, but it was so cool.
Hey, I've wanted to make it down to one of these years. I am still a poor ex-college student trying to pay off all my loans and do all that crap. So once that gets figured out, hey, I might be willing to make that trip, but that
would be great. Yeah.
It sounds like a blast. But again, Alyssa, it was so great talking to you and sharing your journey with us. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I mean, I think, people like you, I think deserve a big nod for what you're doing. You're bringing more attention to both the female side and this very small niche sport, misunderstood niche sport. And I think the more that you do that, the more people will see that it's indeed a sport. It's not just a bunch of meatheads trying to throw some weight up and down. And I mean, like you said, the unsung heroes are all of our support and our significant others. So I think, and family members. So I think a big shout out to them. Shout out to you. shout out to the sport and the people who freaking keep digging day in and day out.
I will say my two favorite responses that I ever get from this is number one, far and away, is when the guest says like, I really had a great time. It was comfortable. It was a great time.
Yeah.
Second though is the times that I get messages from people be like, I didn't realize this about the sport, or I didn't realize that, and you open my eyes to it. That is one for me where I'm just like, because there've been times too where like if I don't get as much viewership, then I'm just like, why am I still doing this? But then I'll get that one message and I'm just like, okay, that's why
It's
I keep doing it.
Then,
yeah,
right? Yeah, if you can drop like a little knowledge nugget every so often that someone really responds to, it does hit home.
Absolutely. So again, everyone, go and give her a follow. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. I always say this, buyer beware. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. But again, Alyssa, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it a lot.
That is great. All right, everyone. This is Ryan Johnson, Didi on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.